top. Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and a happy Thursday to our Bayou Blitz family. Hey, listen, happy early Easter to those of you who celebrate it. I hope all of you have a terrific holiday weekend, and whatever you got planned. And hey, if tomorrow is Good Friday, I guess since we're bringing you the Bayou Blitz on Thursday, we're going to call this an above average Thursday to lead you into Good Friday. There you go. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me, your slightly less angry host, but probably more sleep-deprived host, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy early Easter if you and Katie celebrated. I hope you're doing well, my friend.
Yeah, happy Easter to you guys. Just cook out on Sunday. That's about it. Good to get together with the family. It's it's an excuse to get together with the family, right? So that's great. But sleep deprived, yeah. I don't know if Eric's even in yet, but I know he's a truck driver. I have no idea how you do it because I drove a Sorrento, 26 out of 52 hours of my life, and I'm exhausted driving a 10 hour, then a 6 hour in what did I say, 52 hours or whatever. I have no idea how you do it as a truck driver, and that's not just to Eric. All truck drivers out there, a lot of love and respect to you guys because that's crazy. You said above average Thursday. I'll take it. I'll take the above average Thursday, Wednesday on a Thursday. Don't have too many more of these time scheduling changes because of my schedule or opportunities for them. But with all that aside, busy week for the NFL, news-wise. Maybe not a busy week, Saints news-wise, but some big news regarding some players on both sides of the football, and we'll get into that. But, Bob, let's start with the NFL rule changes. I already saw, like, the facial expressions from you and everything. Do we want to start with kickoff rule changes, or do we want to start with hip drop tackle rule change? Which do you want to talk about more?
I don't want to talk about either one of them, if we're going to be honest. The kickoff rule change is the biggest head scratcher, to me, because it's one more step. It all but eliminates the onside kick. Although the NFL is tinkering with a possibility, not going to happen this year, but with a possibility, and I'm trying to say this with a straight face, that if a team intends to onside kick it, they may inform the referees, who will then inform the other team, and then you are then permitted to line up differently. That's a proposal that was on the table, to counter the kickoff rule change for this year, but it was not passed. So keep an eye on that for future years. And just like Thomas Morstead himself even tweeted out, if this rule was in place back in 2009-2010 season, there would have been no ambush, and he's dead on the money with that. The only positive that you can take from that from this change is if you have yourself a dynamic kick returner like a Rashid Shaheed, it's going to give them a lot more opportunities to return kicks, a little bit, about an extra second and a half or so before the average coverage unit is going to be on top of your kick returner. And a second and a half is an eternity for a guy like Shaheed and some of the other top tier kickoff returners. So I mean, I'm trying to stay somewhat on the positive side, and point towards that. That's just my feeling on the kickoff rule.
I don't get it, right? Like, I understand the safety aspects of everything, right? I do, because and I get it, because I know the question goes like, well, if you had kids, would you let your kids play football? I mean, yes, I would, because of how much I learned about not just the game, but life itself playing football. And I understand the health risks of it. but it's not just football, you know? Like, I guess I'll use this example because it's my, my blood and my family, but like my sister had 3 concussions in a very short amount of time playing soccer. And that was it. She couldn't play soccer anymore. And she still deals with some of the health effects of that. It's not just football. And you guys might be sitting there thinking, soccer? Well, yeah, you're heading a soccer ball, get tackled the wrong way, somebody clips your ankle, you never know how you're going to land, right? Like, that's just the risk of playing sports.
Brendan, I've had 4 concussions in my volleyball career. Twice I was knocked out cold during a tournament.
Ball hit you right in the face?
No, it had nothing to do with the ball. One time a teammate landed on my face, or on my head when I was on the floor, on the gym floor. And another time I was up in the air, came down awkwardly with a teammate underneath of me and landed on my head. And then another time I was diving for a ball at towards the net post. I got the ball. I didn't get it back in play, but I got my hand on the ball. Also got my head directly, like it caught me like right here. So yeah, knocked out cold.
Yeah, but that's sports, right? Like, I understand trying to make football safer, but let's face it, football's not a safe sport. It's never will be. So, like, I understand the movement to try to make the game safer. I get it. But kick returns, punt returns, arguably the most exciting play in football. Yeah. Like, you're going to have people like Morstead who have a hell of an argument, right? Like, one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history doesn't happen if this rule's in place however many years ago. You got people like Devin Hester that are going to be pissed because how many more returns would Devin Hester have in his career if this rule? You can't make everybody happy, but I don't get it. And no offense to the XFL, no offense to USFL or whatever this merger is called. But stealing this idea from a league that had to merge with another league to stay alive, that tells you something too, because that means people didn't find it that entertaining.
Great move, Goodell.
And I'm not going to find, I don't know if I'm going to find this entertaining. We'll see. We'll see how many more returns for touchdowns we get. Because again, I think it's one of the most exciting plays, if not the most exciting play in football, seeing a return for a touchdown. But I don't get it. It's one of those things where old heads, if you want to call people old heads, or baseball purists, if you like that saying out there too. Like, if you're a football purist, kickoffs have been the same for the last however many years, with small tweaks and adjustments, like where you're kicking off, if it's a touchback, where you get the ball. Those are fine. But this one is completely altering something that's been put in place for a super long time. I don't love it. I guess I love the idea of seeing more touchdowns. But what's one thing that I say on this podcast all the time? And maybe I'm biased because there was mostly the position I played, especially as I got older, like special teams, right? Like, people make a whole living off of special teams.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys can think of, when I say that out loud, I know names immediately hit your head, names immediately hit my head, and people watching and listening. When I say special teams player, lifelong special teams player, you got guys in your head. Well, now this is going to eliminate the opportunity for guys to make the team. It's going to be less important to be a hell of a kickoff coverage specialist. It's going to eliminate some of those things that, like, people make their whole lives off of. JT Gray, like, great example, right? For a current guy from New Orleans, like, what has made a Pro Bowl team as a special teamer, all pro team as a special teamer. Like, what? It eliminates some of that, and I don't like that either. Again, biased, but I don't like all that. That's making it a lot more complex and complicated for people. So, not my favorite thing in the world. Let's go on to the other one. hip drop tackles. How do you feel? Cameron Jordan shared his thoughts. We'll get into Cameron Jordan a little bit. Your thoughts on the rule change there?
That's complete horse shit.
Oh, we're bringing out 4-letter words tonight. I like it, Bob.
It is. It's complete horse shit. And what other animal? Any other animal excrement you want to put? And it's Goodell being a horse shit human being. Don't give me player safety, because as I said on Under the Dome on Tuesday night, Goodell does not and has never given two shits about player safety. It is a feeble attempt to protect the shield, from lawsuits, and it might soften some of that blow. But don't give me that he cares about player safety. I'll tell you what this does. That puts the game even more in control of the officiating crews. Because what's going to be designated as a hip drop tackle? You probably, if you played football, then you know what the textbook hip drop tackle is, which, by the way, used to be taught. If you're a what's that?
Was taught when I played.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're a smaller player and you're squaring up against a bigger player, physics are physics. And, no matter how much I thought I was tough, and the Italian Rocky Balboa mentality that I played every sport with, physics are physics. And I oftentimes got run over, when I tried to take on a player twice my size. So that's why they taught the hip drop tackle. You hit and basically use your body weight to slide down this player and take them down. And I realize the safety issue that presents, by the way, not just for the person being tackled, but also the tackler. I mentioned I've been diagnosed with 7 known concussions in my life. I already mentioned a few of the ones that I had on the volleyball court. The other times were on the football field. Making a tackle like that, and a player twice my size or more would come down on my head twice, knee first, and then the rest of their body weight. So it's almost equally unsafe for the tackler. But if you're a player, you don't want your knees being gone after ever. I mean, that's drop the gloves in fighting time. So I understand that part. But again, Goodell doesn't care about that. It's a case of scoring is going to go up. The almighty fantasy football players, fantasy football numbers. It's all about offense, and Goodell and his minions, the black and white striped individuals, having control over the outcome of the game. So now, and I promise you, don't make it a drinking game for you drinkers, because you're going to either be dealing with liver failure or find yourself in rehab like that. Don't make the announcers saying, I don't know what constitutes a hip drop tackle, or I don't see where they get this call. Don't make it into a drinking game, because you'll be down in countless shots per game, per week. And again, that's not my not so subtle shot at the officials having even more control over the outcome of the game. You're now going to see even more mysterious flags fall in the favor of certain teams, certain individuals in certain situations, in certain moments, in certain big games. It's just this has gotten beyond blatantly corrupt. I have no word for it. Don't give me player safety. Don't give me integrity of the game. Integrity of the game, that's effing laughable. With all these rule changes and bullshit judgment calls and everything like that. It is football. Let the people play. The players themselves will govern the safety of the game. It is supposed to be a physical game, not a dirty game. It is supposed to be a physical game. And I guarantee you, throughout NFL, throughout football history, more often than not, the dirty players, the other players will take care of that in and of themselves. If that's all you have to your to your resume and to your repertoire, or dirty hits and everything like that. I know there are exceptions. Jack Tatum, George Atkinson come to mind, and players like that. But other than that, if a player can't play, a defensive player can't play uh, without making a dirty tackle, if that's all they know how to do, the other players are going to take care of that in short notice. That I know that's old school, old west, shootout at dawn, type of mentality, which I admit that I typically have. But again, the players will govern themselves. Don't over politician this thing, because you have made it nothing but a corporate soft game that is only, it's not in the hands of the players wearing the football helmets anymore. It's in the hands of the executives, the billionaires, and their tools on the field wearing the black and white striped shirts. So to that, I would love to raise a couple middle fingers, but I've already pushed our regulations a little bit too much. But I think I think I've gotten across how I feel.
And I'm glad you mentioned putting more power to dictate the outcome of a game in the hands of an official. I'm glad you brought up that point, because hip drop tackle, while you won't know what that is, I know what that is. A lot of you guys listening, watching know what that is. Not essentially every single one of you that have ever played know what that is. And here's my issue with it. If there's a guy trying to make an open field tackle, he gets his hands around the hips, spins the guy around, and the running back breaks free, or whoever has the ball breaks free, makes a cut up field. Is that going to be a flag every time because they got their hands on their hips and they spun them? You know what I'm saying? Like, essentially what you're saying is, at what point is it a hip drop tackle, right? And they're not going to have this black and white thing. It's going to be up to the officials. So that's my thing, is how many times in a game, whether it be Alvin Kamara doing it or whether it be somebody else doing it, they get spun around, they break free, they make a big play, right? Happens a lot. Is there going to be a 15-yard penalty on the defense for an attempted hip drop tackle, or do they have to complete the tackle? And your point, Bob, like, we're not big people. I mean, you might think I'm a big dude, but like, I know you're a small dude. At 6'1", you guys can say what you want, if I'm a big dude or not. I had to make a lot of hip drop tackles because, well, one, I'm not very athletic. I never was. Right? That kind of gives you an advantage, but like Bob said, it was taught. It was taught when Bob played high school football. It was taught 10 years ago when I started playing high school football. That's not a long time. It's been around. I'm sure if you asked guys that are in college right now, was this taught to you guys when you guys were playing, when you guys were coming up, middle school, high school? Was this encouraged? They'd say yes. Which also makes it really difficult for guys like, and I know Cameron Jordan already shared his thoughts on this. How many years has Cameron Jordan been playing football? Not pro football, just football. You think it's going to be easy to all of a sudden be like, oh, I can't tackle like that anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a lot of these older vets that are going to get flagged because, well, for the last 11 years of my pro career, I've never been flagged for that before. That's going to make it really hard. And I think that's my biggest problem with it. Safety, I get it. But again, back to what I just said earlier, frankly, football is not a safe sport. It's a physical sport. You could go and say it's a violent sport, or it's a barbaric sport, or it's a sport of gladiator, or whatever you want to say. All those things are true. But you know what you're signed up for? Like, as silly as that sounds to some people, when you sign your kid up to play football, if Will plays football in however many years, and you sign Will up to play football, you know what you're signing Will up for. When Will ends up being a All-American at whatever high school he attends. Will knows what he signed up for playing high
Mhm.
school football. When Will gets a full ride scholarship to college playing football, Will knows what he signed up for. When Will ends up getting drafted by the New Orleans Saints, I love that I'm making this whole timeline for Will now.
I like it.
When Will gets drafted by the New Orleans Saints, like, and is making millions of dollars, and Bob gets to retire one day, although he may be in a retirement home by the time that happens. Ha! Way to get that. You are welcome. Um,
That's if I'm lucky.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'd like to see little Bob playing bingo somewhere at the home, but like making millions of dollars, like you know what you signed up for. So yeah, it goes back to the safety thing, but the fact that give it 3 weeks, Bob, before there's a game decided by a controversial flag like that, right?
Yeah, and the bottom line is, and I go right back to the corrupt Goodell regime. It's mostly going to affect certain teams, for certain individuals, in certain games or situations. That's just what nearly all of these safety rules. That's exactly what they're set up to do. When a Patrick Mahomes has a 3rd and 19, and his team is trailing by 6 points with a minute and 30 seconds left, and it's an incomplete pass or an interception. Better damn well believe there's going to be a flag, and now there's just one more thing to flag. I mean, this.
I'm glad you said exactly that. 'Cause that was my thing. Was like, it's going to be a 2-minute drill. The defense is going to come up with a 3rd down stop, and the players are going to be 2 yards short of the sticks for a 1st down, and a flag is going to come out and say, no, hip drop tackle, 15-yard personal foul.
Mhm.
And it's going to continue a drive, and that team's going to be able to march down the field, either score a touchdown, take a field goal, win the football game. And we're going to be sitting here talking in week 3, or before, about exactly this. And we're going to be able to reference episode 99 of the Bayou Blitz and say, go back and listen to what we were saying. Like,
Is this episode 99?
Yeah, next one's 100. Isn't that
crazy? Oh wow, we got to do something.
Yeah, well, we might have a lot planned for the next week, but I'll leave that to some deciding factors. I'll leave that to the broadcast gods to see what we come up with. But yeah, like, we're gonna be able to point back to this and say, well, remember when we talked about this in the off season?
Mm-hmm.
Like, specifically this, where some team's gonna get royally screwed over this call late in the 4th quarter of a football game, and that's the problem. The old saying and the old expression goes, what, guys? And if you guys all had your microphones on, we could join everybody in. We could, have an early Easter choir, and we can go ahead and sing it together. Is what? Don't fix what ain't broke. And that changes depending on your dialect, whether you're down here in the South or whether you're up north or you're out west. But don't fix it if it's not broken, right? And frankly, if they came to me, right, if this rule change happened, it was a unanimous decision, by the way, and they came to me with like a stack of paperwork like this high from a doctor that said, look at all these career-ending injuries that happen because of hip drop tackles, I might feel different about it. I might be like, okay, I didn't realize that 100 dudes are never going to play football again because of a hip drop tackle. But guess what? That didn't happen. And guess what? Yeah, there's injuries when those things happen. But it's not like we're amputating dudes' legs when it happens. You know what I mean? Like, it's a part of it. And again, I can't drill that enough. It's a part of the game. Going back to the kickoff rule, and that's going to take time to adjust to. It's a part
Brendan,
of the game.
How many people die per year in a car accident? Knock on wood, obviously.
I'm sure it's like the leading cause of death in the U.S.
I'd venture a guess. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. Should cars be outlawed? If you've been caught in a traffic jam, I'm sure that's what you want. But yeah, truthfully, should cars be outlawed because people can die in car accidents?
Right. No, because I mean, we wouldn't have the ability to do a lot of things.
No.
To answer your question, I know this is a few years ago, but almost 43,000 people died in motor vehicle crashes in 2021. So we've had how many dudes die because of hip drop tackles? And I don't mean that in like this like sick twisted joke.
No, neither do I. But how many people get stabbed a year? Either by accident or on purpose. Should steak knife, should the steak knives in all of our silverware drawers, should they be illegal?
I mean, it'd make it really difficult to eat that steak I did the other night. So
as difficult as it's going to be to make a tackle now.
Exactly. Well, and that's it. Like, I don't know. And again, now I'm going to sound like the old head and the old school guy, but it's like, I grew up being taught these things. Like, this isn't. And I get it. And I get the safety of the players. And the whole Damar Hamlin thing a few years, really scary, right?
Yeah.
And something that I hope none of us have to watch on national television or see in our lives again at all. But that was a freak thing. And that's what the doctors even said, right? Like, Hamlin had to have gotten hit at this exact time. And it's like a 1 in a million chance that all those things go together and that happen. And, by the grace of God or whatever you guys believe in, like, Damar Hamlin lived and he's here. But that, again, that wasn't a hip drop tackle. That wasn't on kickoff. It's just. If
you ask me, we've already spent way too much time on these bullshit rule changes.
I agree. But it's the biggest news out there right now.
Unfortunately.
And it's going to take a lot of time to get used to, especially the kickoffs. Lots of time. And they're punting those, right? Like, they're punting the kickoff, or is it on a tee?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
I was going to say, too, like, that's going to really alter things, too, if you have your punter having to, like, essentially drop kick a ball opposed to having it on a tee and just ripping it. Because I knew dudes in high school that could rip that thing. When I was in high school, we had a guy who could kick it through the uprights every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're essentially Happy Gilmore swinging your leg at it.
Right.
Right. And if you got a drop kick, that's going to alter a lot of things. Where the ball, like, that's a whole different thing. We don't need to talk about this anymore. Let's talk about the 2 injuries for the New Orleans Saints that were big this week, and we'll talk a little bit about drafts, and it kind of goes hand in hand with these injuries. So, we'll start with Cam Jordan because it's there on the bottom. We talked about Cam a little bit already. Cameron Jordan dealt with a high and low ankle sprain last year. I don't know if I want to go as far as like ankle tendinitis or whatever, to where it's just, But anyway, when you're in your mid to late 30s and you're having ankle issues as a pass rusher, that probably explains a lot of Cameron Jordan's season last year. So he had surgery to correct some of those things. Seems to be progressing okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not expected to have any setbacks. Should be active for camp. Bob, anytime you say the word surgery, whether it be at the NFL level or whether it be at a normal human being level, like you and I, not the most comforting words to hear. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Cameron Jordan, it seems like a routine procedure.
Yeah.
That was to clean some stuff up, and he seems like he will be good to go. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's basically it. With the type of procedures that Cam had, it's essentially more about rehab and how your body responds to rehab, rather than the procedure itself. This isn't a long-term thing, and I wouldn't expect anything less from Cam when we heard that he plans on being a full go by training camp, and doesn't expect this to affect him going into the regular season or beyond. Cam Jordan was basically dragging around a dead leg all last year. Kind of tough to do anything when you're on one leg, let alone play football at the level that Cam Jordan is accustomed to playing. That's not an excuse. Cam himself has not made it an excuse, but it's certainly an explanation, for his, by his standards, a poor season in 2023. But it does raise the question. The dude is going to be turned 35 on July 10th. Going into his 13th or 14th NFL season, where he has played at a high level. Forget hardly missing a game. He's only missed two, during his entire career. He barely misses snaps. So that's a lot of wear and tear on a body. And we sort of alluded to this when we were talking about whether Chase Young signing would be an answer to the edge rushing woes. And I said no, because Chase Young has not shown a lot in his young NFL career. B, Chase Young himself is coming off neck surgery. And C, we've had the injury issues with Peyton Turner, and the question of whether Cam Jordan is in decline or whether he should have his snaps dropped to at least more of a situational player. So this falls right in line with all that. And I'm going to second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever opinion I'm on now, about the edge rusher spot. Given what we're about to talk about with the tackles, I no longer think that the Saints should or will spend a first-round draft choice on a defensive end or edge rusher, but I do think it's still very much on the table for New Orleans before the end of day 2. I am not discounting Cam Jordan at all. I am hopeful, for a breakout season from Chase Young. I love Carl Granderson. I am hopeful for development from Isaiah Foskey, but there's a lot of ifs in that paragraph that I just spit out there. You need to bring in, somebody who you believe anyway, is going to give you, a little bit more of a constant. As far as a production level at that position. And yes, I know, Peyton Turner, first round pick bust. Marcus Davenport, first round pick bust. Isaiah Foskey, second round pick, has done really nothing. Chase Young, first round pick, another team, but first round pick, has done little. So I know a high draft choice doesn't guarantee you production, but you certainly increase your odds. So I do think, I don't think Cam's surgery and ankle issues are as nearly as big a concern as what some of the public has made it out to be. Because again, Cam Jordan is an absolute warrior, and will be until the day he decides to unstrap that fleur-de-lis helmet for good. I'm more worried about the general wear and tear on Cam Jordan's soon to be 35-year-old body, and the amount of high-level snaps he has played over the years.
Yeah, I think you and I have both agreed the sooner the Saints can get him to be more of a situational guy, the better for Cameron Jordan. Maybe not the better for New Orleans because there's not really anybody who can go fill his place really well right now, but I think you're going to get a little bit more out of Cam. And whether he ends up being a Saint for life or he goes and tries to chase a ring, as he continues on in his career, the more and more it's going to be crucial for the Saints to get him to that spot or whatever team he ends up going to. I don't think the Saints take an edge rusher on day 1 or day 2. Now I think there's more important needs. And knowing this staff and some of the guys in this front office, they're stubborn as hell. And they're not willing to admit when something hasn't worked out. Whether it be it's not a Saint anymore, whether it be Zach Bond, whether it be Peyton Turner, whether it be the 1 year of Isaiah Foskey, and I'm not ready to throw that, and you're not either. I don't know how high you were on him, but we give up on guys way too soon. I say we. Teams give up on guys way too flippin' quick, right? Different positions, but I'm just gonna get this out, and I will say it throughout the draft process too, so you guys just get ready to hear this thing on repeat. You cannot draft a guy who's 21 years old and expect him by 22 and 23 years old to be a top 10 player at their position. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get really fortunate. But for that to be just the expectation level across the board when you spend a first round pick on somebody is ridiculous. Like the lack of player development in this league now is a joke. You guys know how high I was on Justin Fields, still am. The Bears let him go for a 6th-round pick. Kenny Pickett. I know it's been tough. I know you're in his backyard, and you probably have a lot more to. You could probably have a lot more to say about Kenny Pickett. 2 years, and you're like, nah, we're good. Burn the first-round pick. What happened to the days of at least keeping him through the first rookie deal and going, you know what? And I know quarterback's different. I just threw 2 quarterbacks at you guys.
Right.
But it's like, I was stupid at 21. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just talking about decision making, just in general. Like, I was not privy to the world. I didn't know what day-to-day life looked like. I still don't know what day-to-day life looks like. And I'm 27, like gonna be 28. So you mean to tell me that we can't give guys an opportunity to like figure it out? I don't know. Like that bothers me a lot. So Bosky, you got time. At least in my book, you got time. Maybe not the Saints, but you got time in my book. But I think the Saints are too stubborn to admit defeat, and they're not going to take a guy because they're like, oh, we got a first-round pick in Peyton Turner. We got a second-round pick in Foskey. We just got Chase Young. Like, they're going to ride that thing out this year. And you just paid Carl Granderson. Like, I just don't see that happening. And that kind of segues us into the more important needs for the Saints all of a sudden, which is tackle. Now, some of you, actually probably all of you, saw the news this weekend in terms of Ryan Ramczyk, and the news was more than anything just a quote from Dennis Allen, which sometimes can be scary, right? Because quotes from coaches or front office, wording can get played a lot, right? It can get played a lot into the favor of journalists. It can be played in the favor of whoever. That happens, right? We're both journalists. We're taught to eat up any quote and spin it however we need to make the story work. In this case, it was a pretty blatant quote, and there wasn't really anything to like manipulate. It was very much like, yeah, he's not progressing the way we expect him to, or the knee's not recovering or not recovering, reacting the way it's or whatever, something about that. That's concerning, right? Like that's really concerning to be like, oh, you know, like you timeline this like a month ago, the surgery happened. Oh, like surgery happened. We're hoping, like we have high hopes that it's going to progress. It's going to recover, react, whatever the correct way. And it's almost like a month later on the date, like to the date, like 30 days later, like, yeah, that's not happening. And you're like, oh, okay. Like it's been a kind of a roller coaster of a couple months concerning the knee of Ryan Ramczyk. Because at one point it was like he may never play again. You're like, whoa, you know, yeah, oh my god, like the knee's that bad. And then the surgery happens, and Dennis Allen kind of trots out and is like, all right, guys, well, we're really confident that the surgery worked, and his knee's going to respond really well to the surgery, and it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be great. You're like, okay, thanks, DA. Like, thanks for the words of encouragement. Like, we're super happy. Great. A month later, Dennis Allen like took his old statement, he like ripped it in half. He's like, the knee is not responding the way we hoped. Da 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 da. You're like, oh, like this might be like really bad. Like this might be like career-ending bad. So I'm going to kind of open the floor for the conversation on not just that, like career ending, but what realistic expectations there are for Ryan Ramczyk to see the field at all this year. And then we can talk about potential career ending at 29 or 30 years old. Has he turned 30 yet?
I think he turns 30 this offseason.
Okay, sometime this offseason. I didn't know if we hit that date here. And then third, does this now put all the pressure on the Saints to draft or sign a tackle? Because remember, Andrews Pete, too, who played left tackle for majority of last season, right now is still waiting for a phone call from New Orleans or another team. And the dead money that New Orleans carries off of Andrews Pete makes it less and less likely for him to re-sign. So, Bob, if you want to kind of take everything I said and tell the people here why tackle is on both sides is a massive concern for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, it is a massive concern. And I mean, going into the offseason, it was a massive concern. Now it's even more so. And listen, those of us in the media, that follow this team or that cover this team, we knew behind the scenes, for the last 2 to 2.5 years, that Ryan Ramczyk's knee is not in good shape. That it was a potentially degenerative condition, and now that has come to fruition. So realistically, I mean, Ryan's a warrior. We know he's going to try to give it a go, but we've even seen for the last season or so, that when he is on the field, his mobility, his agility isn't nearly what it once was. He's still a good player. But he's no longer at that elite level. He's kind of a shadow of what he once was. So, the realistic hope for Ryan Ramczyk is that you'll get 3/4 of a season out of him. And hopefully that 3/4 ish, will be part of the stretch run, part or all of the stretch run, if you field a competitive team. Because we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years, Ryan Ramczyk, on the injury report, week after week after week, Ryan Ramczyk basically hasn't practiced on a regular basis in 3 years, or almost 3 years. Well, it would be 3 years if you assume that trend is going to continue this year. There's a reason for that, because the Saints know, the New Orleans medical staff knows, and Ryan Ramczyk knows. There's only so many snaps on that knee left. It's a ticking time bomb, for lack of a better term. And because of that, even if Trevor Penning was playing well, and we'll get into that in a minute, tackle has been a need for this team. That's why they drafted Landon Young. That's why they're bringing in guys like James Hurst, keeping guys like Andrews Pete, bringing in guys like Cam Irving, guys that can either play tackle or have played tackle for other teams. They signed the kid Udo from Minnesota. He's a tackle, and has logged a lot of starts as a tackle. So, I mean, I think you have to look into Ryan Ramczyk's replacement now. I don't think you have a choice. And that puts the Saints in a hell of a spot, because they're not giving up on Trevor Penning, because you don't, unless it's quarterback, like Brendan just pointed out, you don't give up on first-round draft choices after 2 years. You just don't. That's a team's stubbornness. And they need Trevor Penning to work out, because, as Brendan pointed out, Andrews Pete has yet to be signed by anybody, let alone re-signed by New Orleans. Now, the dead money with Pete, if Pete returns, the Saints either have to swallow the fact that they got to pay this guy $13 million this year, which is what his dead cap would be, or re-sign him to like a 2-year deal, where you spread out that cap hit and add a couple more voided years on it, where you're ultimately going to be paying Andrews Pete for a year or two, whether he's on the roster or not, whether this is this year or next year, or 2027 and 2028, something like that. So you're faced with that prospect. But even if you bring back Andrus Peat, because Trevor Penning just hasn't shown anything to you, and Landon Young hasn't consistently shown anything to you, a lot of people are automatically assuming that the Saints are going to draft a tackle at 14 and at 45 when they pick in the second round. Now, I'll tell you that wouldn't shock me, but I don't think they do that. I do think, unless 5 tackles go in the first dozen picks, I do think you could just about bet your house that the New Orleans Saints, at the 14th overall pick of the first round of the 2024 NFL draft, they're going to be announcing some tackle's name. I don't care if Brock Bowers, who's still there. I don't care if the LSU wideout Brian Thomas or Roma Dunze from Washington is still there. They are going to draft a tackle because they have no choice.
Kind of broke my heart a little bit when you said it.
And I'm breaking a lot of people's. I'm breaking my own. If Trevor Penning would have worked out, then maybe because of the depth at tackle in this draft, and I do like the depth a lot, then maybe you hope to get 3/4 of a season out of Ryan Ramczyk and hope for continued development from Trevor Penning. But I think since you're facing the at least decent possibility that Ramczyk misses a good chunk of the season, perhaps all of it, and the fact that you've had to bench Trevor Penning once after just 6 games last year, when you really had Andrus Peat played well, but nobody expected Andrus Peat to play well. When they brought him off the bench and moved him back outside to tackle, nobody expected that. So they basically benched Trevor Penning when they had no realistic option to turn to. That's the same kind of thing that they're facing this year. And even if they like this free agent tackle they brought in, and again, I know they like Landon Young, but guys, use your eyes. Landon Young has not been a reliable starter. He's been serviceable, but do you want a serviceable guy, who's only been a spot starter in his career, to plug and play, at left tackle, because Penning doesn't work out, or at right tackle because Ramczyk can't play? I mean, that's too many ifs. I just skill position once or not. I think the Saints have no choice but to draft a tackle at 14.
To expand what you were saying with Pete, remember this too. There wasn't a lot of people that expected it to be Pete to bounce outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was a handful of us that thought, oh, okay, well, James Hurst is
to be Hurst, right?
And then Pete's going to slide in at left guard. We did not expect Pete to play a position he hadn't played in however many years, especially 5 years, there you go, especially considering that he's a multi-time Pro Bowler at guard.
Yep.
So, yeah, disappointing. I think it's a massive need, but again, the real question will be this, Bob. It'll be, make it really dramatic. Tune in this Thursday night as the New Orleans Saints show the world whether they are stubborn as hell or not. How stubborn are they going to be to make Trevor Penning work? That's going to be the question. Now, they haven't shown us that they're very stubborn to make it work because he didn't play a whole lot as a rookie and he got benched after 6 games this past season. But again, a lot of times in life, you have to look at the history of people, right? What are these people's tendencies? Whether it's a scouting report for sports or whether it's just your own relationships in life. It kind of gives you a key to kind of see and figure out how you want to play a situation. While they haven't been very dependent on trying to make this Trevor Penning thing work, as I joked about earlier, how many other things have they been stubborn about to try to make work? And in a position where you're not really holding good cards, are you going to gamble that nobody else at the table has good cards?
Right.
Or are you just going to fold? Or are you going to wait for the next? Like, what are you going to do? And I could very well, the Saints just go, well, let's just go all in on Trevor Penning here. Like, I could see it happen, and that doesn't mean they don't take a tackle at 14 or 40, whatever. But I could see them go, you know what? Let's use a first-round pick on Brock Bowers. Let's use a first-round pick on whatever other position, and we'll get our tackle at 40, 45.
It is 45, yeah. And
So,
and listen, I've had this kind of debate with people on on social media now that I'm finally able to trickle out some of these draft profiles via publication. That's a whole other dysfunctional story in and of itself that I don't have the temperament to talk about.
please don't.
But
We'll get kicked off.
we would. But the conversation about they can gamble. They can gamble that Penning will be okay. At left tackle, and I actually think that that's a very strong possibility that they will. You draft Bowers or you draft Odunze or you draft whomever at 14, and you get your tackle at 45. I'm like, okay, I see the logic. But do you really want to gamble that a tackle that you like is going to last? At 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I count, by my own scouting and by going off the opinions of other scouts. There are 9 tackles in this draft that will be drafted in the first and second round, first to early third round range. That have the capabilities, at least by analysis, to come in and possibly contribute as a starter right away. 9. That's a deep draft. But do you really want to gamble that at least one of them is still going to be there at 40? That's a hell of a gamble to take. And then I get countered with, you trade up in the second round. Okay, I see that logic too. I do. But without a third round pick, you're then mortgaging, not mortgaging, but you're then giving up either future asset, probably both future assets, and at least a couple of your deep selection of day 3 picks. What I would rather see, and what I think will happen, is they draft a tackle at 14. They draft best player available. Receiver has decent depth. Maybe they grab a tight end. Maybe they grab a safety or a defensive end. So they grab best player available at 45, and then they have 4 fifth-round picks, 2 sixth-round picks.
Package them up and get in the third.
Package them up and get in the third round, exactly. And I see a scenario. I think this is where the Saints will tip their hand on how much they believe in Trevor Penning and or B believe that they're going to get a decent season from Ryan Ramczyk. Joe Alt, who's likely to be gone in the first 7 to 10 picks. Joe Alt, left tackle. Olu Fashanu from Penn State, left tackle. Talise Fuaga, Oregon State, right tackle. J.C. Latham, Alabama, right tackle. Amarius Mims, Georgia, right tackle. Troy Fontanu, Washington, left tackle, left guard. He's played both. Patrick Paul, Houston, left tackle. Tyler Guyton, Oklahoma, right tackle. You see where I'm going with this? I'm not saying that these tackles can't be trained to flip, or can't. It won't be projected for another position. But I think that if they're going to draft a guy, especially at 14, that's played most of his collegiate career at right tackle, that's where the position where they're initially aiming to replace. Same thing at left tackle. So it's going to, if I'm right and they take a tackle at 14, or even if they don't take one at all, it tells us boatloads of how they feel about Trevor Penning's development, Ryan Ramczyk's health, and whatever depth they have at the tackle spot.
Yeah, I think it would tell us a hell of a lot if they go get a left tackle. Because what's one thing we've talked about a ton on this podcast? the difficulties of flipping positions
Mhm.
and the difficulties of going from outside to inside.
Mhm.
Right? It's a lot in even playing it. It's a lot easier to go from inside to outside.
Yep.
Just is. Going outside to inside, it's hard. And a guy like Trevor Penning, who has already been knocked for slow feet, don't really want that moving inside either. So
No.
if they go get a left tackle, like Trevor Penning's time's done.
No, and not only that, what's the other major knock on Penning since he's come into the NFL? His ability to process just hasn't been there. Paralysis by analysis. He's over analyzing and just he's freezing himself. So now you're going to ask him to switch positions when he hasn't even mastered the one that you drafted him for. That's just that's almost like waving the white flag right there. That's not to say that they won't work out Penning at a different spot. And I think if they draft a left tackle, as you pointed out, that's very telling, and that's probably what they will try to do. Again, if they draft a left tackle, it's very telling of how they feel about Trevor Penning's development compared to Ryan Ramczyk's potential health.
I think it's more likely to go right tackle.
I think so. I'm getting that feeling, yeah.
And I think they try to ride it out with Penning a little bit. And I mean, listen, the longer that Pete sits too, the better it plays for New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
Because they could come back and be like, well, listen, you don't got any other suitors. We'll give you a 1 year, $3 million deal. Yeah, that's like 16 mil of a cap hit with the dead money, but you feel a lot better about that than being like, okay, we're gonna pay Andrews Pete like $7 to $10 million a year on top of that cap hit. So the longer he sits, the better it is for New Orleans to bring some insurance policy back
Yep.
as well. So, all right, well, we covered all the major news. Bob, let's play a little daughter drop before we head out of here for the week. Daughter drop. New Orleans signs a wide receiver in the next 2 weeks.
Signs via free agency. I'm gonna drop that. I said a couple of times I still believe that they'll bring in another free agent-ish wide receiver, even if that means bringing back a guy like Keith Kirkwood or Lynn Bowden. And I also believe that they'll draft one or two as well. They have to. They only have 5 on their entire depth chart right now. But when they do bring in another free agent wideout or two, it's going to be just to compete for the back half of the depth chart. So it's not a guy that you need to sign right now. It's a guy that you can go to, especially if it's a Kirkwood or a Lynn Bowden. It's a guy that you can pick up the phone after the draft, as your May mini camp approaches, or even wait until the June mini camp and say, hey, Keith. I say Keith because it's happened a lot. Hey, Keith or Lynn or whomever, we'd like to bring you back to compete for a spot on the depth chart, or even if you go outside of somebody that has been with your organization. So no, you said in the next 2 weeks, I'd be a little bit surprised. So I'm going to drop that one. My turn. A daughter drop, exactly what we were talking about. The New Orleans Saints will draft an offensive tackle with a first and second round pick in this draft.
I'm going to drop it. I don't think they go back to back. As much as I'd love if Brock Bowers drops, which I don't think he drops to 14.
No, I don't either.
I don't. But
I'll put it this way. I'm hoping he doesn't, so that way we don't have to sit here on during our draft coverage and say, they needed a tackle, but man, I wanted Brock Bowers. I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't either. I think it's really likely they go at 14. I think 45 is going to be more. And some people are going to really disagree with me on this one. I hate the idea of taking best player available sometimes. Sometimes. I think when you have a need or multiple needs, it's not so much best player available as it is, here are 3 needs. Who's the best in that 3? So I think the Saints could kind of go more that route than like truly best player available, the best player available that fits a need. I think that's more likely at 45. DJ threw it in the chat, so I'm just gonna take DJ's question. So DJ, congrats, you're on dot or drop. DJ wants to know. I have to kind of reword it, but dot or drop. Michael Thomas will sign with an NFC team this offseason.
I said as soon as the offseason started, when we believed that Michael Thomas was done as a Saint, that I pictured him in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform. I think I don't remember who, but the Chiefs have made a rather significant move at wide receiver. That I'm not sure Michael Thomas will land there. Frankly, if Michael Thomas had his choice, he'd probably want to not only sign with an NFC team, but probably an NFC South team. But I think it's 50-50. And I'll drop it because it is 50-50. It's reaching the point where Michael Thomas is just going to end up signing with whoever wants him. And if it's a couple teams, it's someone that he feels anyway is close to a contender. I'm feeling like a Buffalo Bills type of scenario here. So I'll drop it. If Michael Thomas had his choice, he will want the New Orleans Saints on his schedule. Zero doubt in my mind about that. But I have a feeling that Michael Thomas will ultimately sign with an AFC team. Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, my original prediction of the Kansas City Chiefs, somebody like that.
Calvin said Chiefs signed Hollywood Brown. That's right. They also signed Smith Jr., which I know is not a receiver, but a receiving tight end. And that would be a good one to punch with Travis Kelce as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last question of the night, Bob. What you got?
Oh, God. I don't actually know. I'll just throw this out there, and we will have the next couple of weeks to talk about the other positions, as far as how strongly we believe the Saints will or will not address it in the draft. The position that we have not talked about at all, running back. Now, we knew going into free agency the Saints weren't going to touch a running back, not a significant name anyway. But the draft, the almighty best player available at 45 if a backfall is there that you love, or in the third round if they trade back. Are the Saints going to will the Saints draft a running back before day 3 of the NFL draft?
Yeah, I'll drop it almost immediately.
Same.
If you said at all, I'll dot it because the Saints do it every year. Almost. Or if it's not in the draft, it's 1 or 2, sometimes 3 undrafted free agents. Running back. It's just a position the Saints value. I had some questions about Jamal Williams maybe being like a casualty, like cap casualty. But he signed a decent deal. Mm-hmm. And you don't have another guy who can really run in between the tackles like Jamal. Especially if Kamara's hurt or something happens. Right? You drafted Kendre Miller with a day 2 pick last year. And again, because it's not quarterback, like you kind of have to ride that first contract out. Regardless how you feel about him. I thought he had moments last year where he looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to get some more opportunities this season. And so, no, could I see the Saints get an undrafted free agent? Sure. Could I see the Saints sign a veteran for minicamp and let him compete? Sure. But in terms of drafting a guy on the first 2 days, especially considering you only have 2 day 1, day 2 picks, I don't see the Saints drafting a running back at 45. And I'm glad you brought up what you did with 4 5th-round picks and 2 6th-round picks. It's like a lifetime ago now. 4 years? Has it been 4 years? Remember that the Saints traded all of their day 3 picks back in 2020 to move back to have the final pick of day 2 to select Adam Troutman.
Yeah.
That didn't work, but and I had high hopes for him.
Just a bit outside.
Just a bit. But look for the Saints to also be monitoring the end of the 3rd round.
Oh yeah.
because they're going to sit there and they're, man, if this guy keeps dropping, we have assets to trade.
Yeah.
And they might do something like, we'll give you 2 fifths and a sixth
Mm-hmm.
and a future fifth or whatever. Because guess what? No offense to 5th round picks. Because I like late picks, especially that pan out. The Saints don't need 4 5th round picks this year.
No.
When you can turn that into a 3rd round, late 3rd, maybe a mid 4th, if another guy falls, into day 3 that you really like. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, ever since the compensatory picks were officially announced, I knew right then, and again, if I had any money, I would bet a significant sum on the Saints parting with at least a few of those day 3 picks to move up either early into round 4 or late, midway through to late round 3. Is the range that the Saints typically make a lot of moves in. And we saw it even last year with. I think they traded up to get both Saldivari and Hainer, at some point during day 3. So we know the Saints in the 4th round. So we know the Saints are extremely active in that range, and you could still pick up some good quality players as we've seen.
All right, that's all the time we have for the Bayou Blitz this week. Bob, where can people follow you online? I won't even say to read your articles because I know it's a whole different debate right now. But where can people follow you and follow some of your work and some of your thoughts and some of your opinions on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, we're getting those thoughts and opinions, and yes, even articles out there as best we can. We have had some publishing issues at the Saints News Network. We are working diligently to get them worked out as quickly as possible. We have at least gotten back to the point where we're slowly starting to trickle out the publishing of articles. As a matter of fact, as we went on there, Kyle T. Mosley, published one of my pieces on Florida State wide receiver Keon Coleman. So check that out. Continue to follow us at the Saints News Network, at Saints News over on Twitter. Because this is the time of year where we usually shine. And as soon as we get our technical issues figured out, we'll be right back at it. And you can follow me, Bob Rose, on Facebook at Bobby R 2613 over on Twitter. Like I said, we're working as difficult. I don't want to get into the ins and outs. That's not really relevant, for this particular platform on this particular night. But we're working as hard as we can to get our works back out to you. And in my case, the works are all the draft profiles, that I've been doing film analysis on and taking notes on for the last 4 months. Should be my time to shine. And we're getting them out there as quick as possible. So, if you already follow us, be patient with us. If you don't follow us yet, give us a follow, and then please be patient with us.
I'm surprised you didn't say if you don't already follow us, what the hell are you doing?
I can't say that because we haven't done much since last Thursday to say what the hell are you doing. So,
I get it. I guess we might have a pretty fun episode next year. And we might be swapping days around too, but for good reason. Katie and I have to go out to Florida for food and cake tasting for our wedding, so we're really excited for that.
Oh, gee, the beach?
Not
cake?
quite. Not quite. It's Orlando, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, I've been to Orlando. That's as close as you can get to the beach without the beach. Yep. So I'll still call it the beach, the sun, and cake.
Good life, man.
I want to shove that middle finger back on the screen, Brendan.
Sometimes life is beautiful. Sometimes, but all right. For myself, you can follow me on virtually everything at BT Boylan. We have a 100th episode next week, Bob. We're really excited for that. We'll have to have some discussions on what we're going to do for that. And you know what? I'm feeling a giveaway for the 100th episode because some of you know I like to collect things. I have an extra Drew Brees Super Bowl 44 Funko Pop to give away for the 100th episode. We're going to figure out and discuss how we're going to do that. Probably be a giveaway via the artist formerly known as Twitter, but we will discuss. We will let you know. So you guys can get your hands on that as a thank you for supporting us through 100 shows so far. So for Bob Rose, I'm Brendan Boylan. Until sometime next week for an 100th episode and what could potentially be a really fun episode.
There's something that starts with an F.
Yeah, we've kept this not PG today at all, but that's fine. That's fine. Every now and again, we got to get X-rated every now and then, or R-rated or whatever. But nonetheless, until next time, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and we'll see you next week for the Bayou Blitz podcast.
Good night, all.